Man, these last 2 days have been a blur. And I know I'm not the only one. If you guys are into the Call of Duty franchise, y'all are feeling my pain. You know, there's this verse in the Bible where it says, "In his heart a man plans his course, but the Lord determines his steps." This week, or at least these last few days, have been nothing but a example of this in my life. I mean, I had planned out so much for this coming week based on the beta rolling out properly, and I'm not doing this video for the beta. I have a point in this, all right? So I mean, I had planned out a certain series of events, and they didn't come to fruition, and I got frustrated because of it. Now, why do I speak about all that? Well, we're going to go back into the book of Ecclesiastes, but before I do that, let me just say this. I know I have a lot of subscribers who may not have ever tuned into this series. You guys, on Sunday, I do a series called For Gamers. It's where I talk about the Bible, I talk about God, my faith, try to teach you guys a lesson. If you want to listen to it, great. If you don't, just go ahead and turn off the video, go back to your lives, and stay tuned tomorrow for another video, all right? But in Ecclesiastes Chapter 11, Solomon talks about something, and let me give you some broad terms. Now, obviously, the beta rolling out improperly and screwing up my schedule, that's a very light-hearted example, okay? I mean, take it from me, okay? Now, for the last, I'd say 8 months, I have constantly been anywhere between 5 to 7 videos ahead. I always had videos lined up until today. I'm actually making this video on Saturday night, and it's gonna go up Sunday, hopefully, if everything goes well with the upload, because you guys know if you're in YouTube, sometimes the uploads mess up. And then I have nothing. I mean, I just recently had the upload on Thunderstruck Gaming, so you'll probably see that sometime this week. But for the first time since starting YouTube, I have not been ahead of the game. So I'm in a little bit of a predicament. Now, in Ecclesiastes chapter 11, Solomon talks about it in a more deep, meaningful way. You know, one of the things that he talks about, let me give you an example. Let's say this, like, you don't want to say, I don't want to get married because I just don't want to deal with arguments with my wife. That's not a good enough example. I mean, you get married because there's a lot of great things that come from it. There's beautiful things. There's love, and there's fun. There's memories. Or you don't want to say, I don't want to have kids because what if they have Down syndrome? We don't avoid the pleasures in life because of possibilities of something going wrong. We prepare our lives accordingly to the possibility that something could go wrong. Let me tell you what Solomon says. We'll go to Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 1. It says, "Cast your bread on the surface of the waters, for you will find it after many days. Divide your portion 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth." Now, Solomon, back then, the major form of currency was grain. So casting your bread on the surface of the water is another way of explaining the trade of grain. So he would load the ships full of grain and he'd send them out, and you had no assurance that they would come back. I mean, the ships could crash in a storm, they could be robbed by pirates, they could have crooked sea captains. I mean, you didn't have any way of knowing if they'd come back, but you still take that chance, because with the risk there comes reward. So you prepare your life and you take chances, but you want to what's called diversify your risk. All right, that's the point of this. And I know we're looking at it like, well, how do you get the whole beta thing and diversifying your risk? You know what? I put all my eggs in one basket. You've heard that statement before. Everybody's heard that statement. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Well, I did it. I did not follow verses 1 and 2. I did not diversify. I didn't plan ahead. All right, now I have gameplays. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't do enough to prepare myself for something bad happening, like PlayStation Network going down and Infinity Ward not having their stuff together. All right, so but let me keep on going here. All right, so let's go to verse 3. It says, "If the clouds are full, they pour out rain upon the earth, and whether a tree falls towards the south or towards the north, wherever a tree falls, there it lies. He who watches the wind will not sow, and he who looks at the clouds will not reap." All right, so what are we doing with these verses? What he's saying is, you know, sometimes it's going to rain and sometimes it's not. And we're looking at this from a farmer's perspective. I mean, sometimes the seasons are good in your life and sometimes they're bad. And sometimes a tree falls to the left or the right or the north or the south. But you take it as a good thing. And they're both blessings. Rains for your crops and trees that fall for firewood. Maybe you'll get them and maybe you won't. But that's just the way life is. Sometimes things work out and sometimes they don't. Now, I'm not the only one who probably has 180 stories about, me planning my course and walking through life and the door just being slammed shut in my face, only to have God open up a window and say, come on into something even greater. You guys can see this time after time after time in your life. You see it on a small scale and on a big scale. And that's what he's talking about here. I mean, you cast your bread on the water, you diversify your risk, you send it out in all directions, not knowing which one will come back. Sometimes the rain will fall on you, sometimes it won't. The trees will fall for firewood if you need them to survive. But you never know which one God's going to bless, so you just be patient. But a deeper meaning to this, just listen to how I word this. You cannot spend your time trying to guess which route is going to work, trying to figure out which one God's going to bless. When you send out your ships, you got to send out multiples. You can't just send out one and say, you know what, God, I'm going to put it all on this one. I'm going to send it out and you're going to bless it. I'm going to guess that this is the one you're going to do. I'm not going to worry about the other 7. This is the route I'm going to go, because you may be wasting your time, because life is never going to play out perfectly to the way that you want it to play out. And you've got to be very, very careful on this, because when you get married, you're going to marry a fallen person, a sinful person. And you're going to have sinful kids. And you're going to get a job and your boss is going to be a sinner as well. All along the way in life, whenever you get married, you have kids, your friends, your boss, your family members, you're going to get hurt. Okay, so no matter how hard you try to guess what is the safest, best route that God has set before you, you're still going to get smacked. So what do we do with that as men? Well, we stand firm and we be a man. We take our licks. You got to let the chips fall where they may, as they say, and you live boldly and you let God be the God of your life, the God of grace, and you just take a stand and you trust in him that he'll take you through it. All right, let me continue on. It says in verse 5, just as you do not know the path of the wind and how bones are formed in the womb of a pregnant woman, so you do not know the activity of God who makes all things. This is a beautiful verse, all right? What he's saying is this, is that in our human existence, in our human eyes, life is unpredictable and mysterious to us. Now, not to our sovereign Father, but to us. It's unpredictable and mysterious, just like the wind blowing around us. We look at things that go on in the world and we don't have a clue as to what God is doing. But we have to trust in him that he has our best interest, and that we have to remember that he sustains us in all things. I get into this conversation all the time with my wife, and I don't know if she can hear me because she's in the other room, all right? But I like the way Tommy puts it. He says it's the paralysis of analysis. When you sit down and you're trying to figure out what God's trying to do in your life, as a Christian, you feel like God's trying to give you signs. And you guys, I'm not going to go into signs or anything like that, but you try to figure out, what is God trying to tell me to do? Well, in the Bible, there are specific things that God says you can do this and you can't do that. Those are let's call those the north and the south. The north is for the good, the south is for the bad. But as for the east and the west, the left and the right decisions, those are for you to make up. I mean, you choose. They may work, they may not, but you commit. You don't sit there and on the left or right decision, wonder, what is God trying to tell me in this? No, you just make a choice and you go for it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, that wasn't meant to be, you make another choice. Now, we don't violate the covenant of God. I mean, we always keep him as God and Father of our life. But on the left and right decisions, you just got to pick and you got to go for it. And if God's going to bless it, he's going to bless it. We're going to cast our bread on the water, and if he decides to pour rain down on it, wonderful. If not, see you later. We'll move on to the next ship. All right, so then in verse 6, it says, sow your seed in the morning, and do not be idle in the evening, for you do not know whether morning or evening sowing will succeed, or whether both of them alike will be good. The purpose of the sovereignty of God is not to cause us to be lazy. As a Christian, we believe that God is in control of all things, and that his providence provides for us, and that everything in our life was set out before us. There's the beginning in Jeremiah. Let me go to the book of Jeremiah. You got to hear this part. These verses are just awesome, and it's amazing because I actually got into a conversation here recently with another gentleman about the sovereignty and the providence of God. A lot of people have this faith or this belief that God created the world and then he stepped back and he led us to ourselves to fend and do whatever we want to do, and then when we die we go to be with him. That's not That's not the way the Christian believes. The Christian believes that God is a personal God, and he's involved in every single facet of life, and that he set in motion all the events. He places the leaders in the countries, and he allows wars, and he moves the pieces around to fulfill his will, and all things together for good. Now, where do we get this from? Well, there's all different sections in the Bible that you see the sovereignty of God and his providence. But listen to how specific it is in the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 1, we are going to go to verse 4 and 5. And it says, "The word of the Lord came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." Now, what does that mean? That means that before Jeremiah was even born, that God already had a plan set out for him. And while he was in his mother's womb, he was forming him to carry out the plan that he had for him. Now, just like Jeremiah, God formed you. He knew you before your parents were even created. He knew what you were going to do, who you were going to marry, and he had this whole life set out before you. Now, it's your choice whether or not to believe that. He's not going to force that upon you. You choose whether to believe that there is a God and that his son is Jesus, or you don't. But irregardless, he has a plan set out for you. All right, now I got a little bit carried away on that verse. Go back to verse 6 again in Ecclesiastes 11. It's talking about working, that when you make up your mind on what you're going to do, and you're going to trust in God to carry out, or hopefully carry out, what your plan was, you've got to do your part. You've got to sow your seed in the morning and in the evening. You've got to play your role. You've got to do that work and see if God's going to choose to bless that. You can't just say, this is the path that I want to go, God, do everything for me. You've got to play your role. Or as I remember Tommy would always say this, you do not lean on a shovel and pray for a hole. You start digging, and God will give you the strength and the endurance to carry out that digging process. All right, verse 7, "The light is pleasant, and it is good for the eyes to see the sun. Indeed, if a man should live many years, let him rejoice in them all. And let him remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. Everything that is to come will be futility." What a verse. In spite of everything that's going to happen in your life that you don't see coming, life is still ultimately good. It's amazing to be alive. You remember that verse I said in Ecclesiastes chapter 9, that better a living dog than a dead lion? Because he still has an opportunity to live. There's hope. Even when life doesn't cooperate, it's still amazing. Just getting up and seeing your wife and seeing your kids and going to work, getting to play a video game, watching a movie, going to a ball game, having a good meal. Life is awesome. And when he talks about where it says, remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. He's not talking about when bad things happen in your life. He's talking about when you get older. He's talking about when you get really old and you start to slow down. You know, when your joints don't work as well, and maybe you don't see in 20/20 and your hearing starts to fade. I mean, part of living in this world is that your body is going to break apart. So verse 9, "Rejoice, young man, during your childhood, and let your heart be pleasant during the days of young manhood, and follow the impulses of your heart and the desires of your eyes. Yet know that God will bring you to judgment for all these things." Now, this doesn't mean that you just run crazy and you do whatever your heart desires, sin included. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, take a chance. Get out there and go for it. All right? But remember, God will bring you to judgment, meaning that if you push too far, he's going to pull you back in. The whole judgment thing, let me word it to you a different way, is that God will bring judgment in your life. So make sure that you play within the rules when you're seeking out the path that you're going to go down. He knows the way to truly enjoy life is by wisdom. So you can't enjoy life without the context of holiness. So play within the rules. Do what's right. All right, verse 10, it says, "So remove vexation from your heart and put away pain from your body, because childhood and the prime of life are fleeting. Quit worrying." I see this in young people today, teenagers. You guys, I never worried when I was a kid. I lived life. I mean, there's nothing greater than being a teenager and all you have to do is go to school and play sports. You think it's like you guys are so exhausted. Wait till you gotta go to work. Wait till you got kids. Wait till you get married, man. Oh my gosh. You want to talk about worrying? Just relax. You can't enjoy life if you're always scared. You have to go for it. You have to let go, understand that God is in control of everything, which is that contentment that comes from being a Christian and understanding his sovereignty in your life. If you want to start a business, go for it. If you found a person that you want to marry the person. Do they have a heart for God? If she does, go for it. You want to live in an apartment? Go for it. You want to live in a house? Are you financially set to live in a house? Then go get that house. Do you have a job opportunity? Does it meet the parameters that you need in your life? Will it provide for your family? Does the schedule work out? Then take the job and go for it. All right? Wow, that actually went a little bit faster than I thought it was. That's the end of chapter 11. What a book. All right, you guys, we have one more chapter left in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, which we will go over next week, hopefully. I do have another series that I would like to do. It's a little different. It's actually on a prophecy. I had a couple people for the Gray's Mail ask me about the rapture. And some people asked me about end of times, and they wanted me to talk on it. Well, what a lot of people don't know is there's actually a prophecy being fulfilled right before our eyes. And I thought about doing a little series on it for Church for Gamers, so we'll see. All right. Heavenly Father, we love you, we praise you, we thank you for today and your many blessings. I pray, Lord, that these words penetrate the hearts and the minds of the people listening to it. And I pray through it, Lord, that you would be glorified and that they would come to know your Son, Jesus Christ, as Lord and Savior. May you watch over us and bless us in all that we do. In your heavenly and holy name. Amen.